This little story is from 2012. I live in Canberra, Australia. We're an incredibly boring place 99% of the time. Not much happens, but when it does, everyone hears about it. I just started year 11 at a new school. The last 2 years of high school are done at a separate school, which we call college, to year 7 to 10. Everyone's about 16 to 18 at this campus. I was a bit of an overachiever when it came to English, so I was placed in a class of 6 or 7 other overachievers in an experimental English class taught by the deputy principal in charge of my grade. Basically, rather than physical books and assignments, the school wanted to trial a totally digital format, which I hated, by the way. We worked almost exclusively on our personal iPads that we had to bring to each lesson. Even though the class was small, I don't remember much about most of the kids. They weren't particularly interesting, I guess. I kept to myself after the collapse of my high school friendship group and sat next to the other quiet kid in this particular class. I'll call him Jimbo. Jimbo was even quieter than me. I got myself in trouble a couple of times for challenging the teacher's views, but I honestly do not remember this guy ever saying a word. One lesson for some reason that escapes me where we were discussing our pets. Jane talked about her cat, Bob about his dogs, whatever. It was one of the few times I contributed without challenging the teacher even. Jimbo still said nothing, just flicking idly through his iPad and leaning back on his chair as he very often did. A couple of weeks into the year, I finally found a few new friends to hang out with on breaks. Jimbo was absent from class, and then the next and the next. This kid just disappeared, and after another couple of weeks, I asked the deputy where he was. This dude hated me, so he literally rolled his eyes, shoved past, and said nothing. I shrugged it off because I knew the teacher was a dickhead, but I was still curious. I brought it up to my new mates because it's not common around here for a kid to just stop showing up to school. We're a small city. Someone always knows something. If he'd moved schools, someone would have heard. There had to be some kind of explanation for the sudden extended absence. One of my new buddies took me aside. I'll call him Jerry. Jerry was a good, goofy guy. He was the type to always joke around, so when he pulled me aside all serious, I knew that something was off. Jerry and Jimbo had been friends back at their old high school. At some stage over the summer holidays when Jerry had visited him, Jimbo had spilled a glass of milk in his kitchen. Jerry laughed about it, but Jimbo demanded he clean it up, even though Jerry obviously wasn't the one who made the mess. Jerry turned his back, and the next thing he knew, Jimbo had a knife to his throat and made him clean up the spill at knife point. But it gets worse. So much worse. He tells me that Jimbo's iPad was absolutely packed with videos. Videos of him doing the most disgusting subhuman things to animals. Primarily dogs. I physically can't bring myself to write the specifics of what he did to those poor souls. Think the BTK killer, but without the people. He'd been stealing them from backyards and luring strays. There was even a teacher at the school who'd come to find out why his dogs were going crazy so late, and then he saw Jimbo scamper off into the night. There was a vast paddock not far from the school that I used to go smoke weed in, because the grass was tall enough to keep us relatively well hidden from the rest of the world. Absolutely huge, a good kilometer square if not more. That specific paddock in question I learned had been his killing fields. I was just getting high in the opposite corner, closer to the houses that lined one side. If we decided to venture diagonally across for whatever reason, we very possibly could have come across something he'd done. The iPad that he'd recorded it all on had been less than a foot away from me for weeks. He'd flicked through the images of what he'd done so casually in that little classroom of 6 or 7 students. Hell, he knew that each one of us had pets. He also had a bucket list found on the iPad, the top item of which was graduating to killing humans. From what I know, Jimbo was convicted for animal cruelty, and nobody's heard of him since. I'm a 25-year-old female, and this happened maybe 8 to 9 years ago, and I was 16 to 17 years old then. I'm from a small village, and I went to school in the nearest big city, which was about 40 kilometers away, about 25 miles. Because public transportation was so bad, I had no way to get home unless they came for me, or I had to walk 4 kilometers. I lived in a dormitory during the week in the city where I studied. I stayed in the city during the week and went home on Fridays, then back again on Sundays. I always get off the bus at the main station when I arrive in the city around 2 p.m. My boyfriend, who came from another town, also studied in the city. He came by train. Every Sunday I waited for him at the station for about an hour and a half and then went to the dormitory together. That day was no different. I was waiting for him sitting upstairs at the station in a spot where I could see the entire ground floor from above. I had my headphones in and on my phone just sitting there. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a homeless woman wandering around. She sometimes stood still and looked around, but I didn't pay much attention. There are a lot of homeless people in that area. Time passed. I was still sitting, headphones on, phone in hand. Then I saw the homeless woman start walking in my direction. I still didn't think too much of it. When she was about a few feet away from me, I noticed she was talking to other people who were sitting nearby, probably asking for money. A few moments later, she had started walking toward me again. I saw her, but I didn't lift my head. Then she stopped in front of me. That's when I looked up. She just stared at me. Her eyes looked like she was high on something, and she was slightly swaying. She was dirty, honestly disgusting to look at. Some green liquid was dripping from the corner of her mouth, and her face was dirty. She wore a thick coat, gray pants, black boots, even though it was spring, and had a black backpack. She had brown hair, brown eyes, looked around 40 years old, though she could have been younger. I saw her lips moving. She was talking to me. I took out my headphones and gave her my attention. I'm not a rude person, and I always try to speak kindly to people. But when I removed my headphones, she just went silent, just stared at me. "What? Could you say that again?" I asked her. Then she spoke again, but I didn't understand a single word, just mumbling. She stared at me with those glassy eyes. I just shook my head. "Sorry, I can't understand what you're saying," I told her and looked at her. At this point, I felt my heart beat faster. I got scared. I didn't know what she wanted, and something about her made me feel really uncomfortable. She started mumbling again, and while she mumbled, she began searching for something in her coat pocket with her right hand. I looked down at her hand to see what she was doing or what she wanted from me. At this point, I thought maybe she needed help with something. I looked back up into her eyes and waited to see what was going to happen. Then I saw her pull her hand out of her coat and look down at her hand again. She was still mumbling. I then saw a piece of glass in her hand. She slowly slid it up under her coat to her forearm, holding the sharp end in her palm. It was pretty big and sharp, probably about 6 inches. That's when I realized something was very wrong. My eyes widened. I was scared. I asked her one last time, a bit more irritated now. "What do you want from me?" I knew that there were people around. It was a train station in broad daylight, so I didn't think she would actually do anything. Well, very suddenly, she stepped toward me and pushed the glass toward me, right toward my neck. I reacted immediately. I jumped up in time, pushed her away, and yelled at her. "What the hell are you doing?" She started mumbling more angrily. I had no idea what she was saying. My whole body was just shaking, and I was terrified. I grabbed my travel bag quickly, all while keeping my eyes on her. She was still mumbling angrily, holding the glass shard in front of her, staring at me. "Leave me alone! Go to hell!" I shouted at her again, and as I rushed off, I saw that everyone at the station was now watching us. I ran outside the station and saw some police officers nearby. I felt relieved. I walked toward them, but I didn't say anything. I knew that if I told them, they'd probably just tell her to leave, and that would be it, so I just stayed close to them. A few moments later, I saw the woman come outside too. She was walking in my direction, angrily looking at me. I didn't see the glass in her hand anymore. I grabbed my bag and walked to a different part of the station courtyard where she couldn't see me. I was trembling, scared, and in shock. I never saw her again. A little bit later, my boyfriend arrived and I told him what happened. He was surprised and worried too. He told me to never wait for him at the station again, and I didn't. From that point on, I always waited for him at the dormitory. Even now, every time I go to that station, which is rare, I always get anxious and stay alert. I still live in that city now, even after finishing school, and I'm still with my boyfriend. We live together. Just knowing what could have happened there if I hadn't reacted in time or if I had just ignored her, it still scares me. This may sound bad to some. It might sound harmless to others, but I was never found out about these things. It wasn't illegal as far as I can tell, but I'm not sure what I'm about to say counts as. I just really want to talk about it though. If my post is removed, I'll understand. This all happened when I was 15 to 17. I was in middle school to start off. I had very few friends and my family life was not that great either. I didn't feel alone, nor did I want any friends. I just wanted to get the school day over with and be alone in my room. I had no bad thoughts before these years. I was going to second period math when I saw him. A guy around my age, tall with blonde hair. He was very quiet, but he had many friends when I saw him at lunchtime. I had never paid him any mind before, but something about him made me feel weird. Like I wanted to get to know him, to speak to him, and to be near him. I must confess, before this, I had never felt romantically inclined nor sexually to anyone or really anything, so these feelings didn't feel like love to me. But maybe it was just delusion that pushed my next move. I would always watch him when I had lunch. I got in line just like normal, but I always knew where he would sit. He never changed spots and I stood behind him, still and unmoving. It really felt amazing to be near this person for no good reason. Over time, it was more than just staring at him. I followed him in the halls of our school and I knew his entire schedule. I knew his full name, age, birthday, his house, and his family. I didn't think it was weird. I just wanted to know more about him and to be with him in a way that I couldn't really describe. I told myself it wasn't love, because why would I love a person I've never spoken to or really even know? It got to the point that I always thought about him. When I got home, I'd go through the pictures I took of him from school that day. I was almost excited. What if he caught me? Would he tell me to never speak to him again or go near him? Would he think it was nice and speak to me how I want? What would happen? I didn't even care what happened. It wouldn't change how I felt. Nothing did. I got bold. One day he had to walk home, so I followed him to the nearby wooded area. He was a pretty fit guy, so he was quicker than I was, and I did get tired of walking so far, but I was determined to follow. I didn't want to follow him home since I already knew where he lived, and I wasn't going to go that far. He almost saw me many times, as the path he was taking was normal for him, but not for me. It was rocky with dead leaves all over. I tried to be quiet to not let him notice me. Eventually, I left, satisfied with new pictures of him walking to add to my delusion and to my growing collection. I regret every bit of this. I didn't study for school like I normally would, so I'd sometimes talk to the teachers and they would tell me how I needed to get higher grades to pass the class. So I tried to get back into the flow of doing work more often. When I was moved to a different biology class, I saw him there in the back. I was sitting right next to him with a reasonable gap between us. I felt so happy that I would finally get the chance to speak to him without worry or anxiety or people listening in. During that class, he would sometimes look my way, at me, but I didn't think too much of it at first. Maybe he was just doing it to look near me at someone else. But it kept happening, so I would do the same. We would stare at each other. It felt so... I don't even know how to describe it. Eventually, I tried to talk to him and ask for help with some notes. I never really spoke to anyone, so this was new to me. I only spoke to teachers and sometimes, if I had to, other students. He was nice, and he would speak to me in a tone that I was unfamiliar with. It was pleasant. It didn't last too long, as I realized that he had found a poem that I'd written to him that I was not going to give him. He took the paper from my desk, and I just stood there next to him, honestly more worried than I thought I'd be. He didn't say anything. He just sat down, and we didn't speak during that period. I left and went online to find his socials. I apologized to him and I said I understood if he didn't want to speak to me. He said that he knew that I liked him, which shocked me. But to be honest, it was obvious to everyone but myself. He never knew that I followed him or took pictures of him. At least, I don't think so. I later found out that he was not supportive of me liking him, as he was a straight male and I was not his usual romantic interest. Over time, I did stop following him, and I never spoke to him after that, but he would still stare at me very often. I don't know why. I had done this with one other person, the same game of following and taking pictures, but this other guy was cut short as I moved away. I honestly don't know what compelled me to do these things. I hope I don't do them again. I now live happier than when I was in these situations, so I hope things can sort themselves out for me mentally. The story may not sound so bad, but I left out details on purpose due to them being private and somewhat disturbing. This might not be one of the freakiest stories of all time, but it's a great reminder that you should never fully relax in a taxi. In the place where I live, the taxi service is pretty well developed. We have a global app where you have an ID as a passenger and the driver has one too. There's a rating system so you know what to expect, and people get punished for doing bad things. You feel pretty safe with that system. It's not like the old days of completely random taxis. I've never had any serious trouble with drivers until yesterday. I needed to travel from one small town to another, passing through a big city. Everything felt off from the very start. The taxi was showing up weirdly on the app's map, but I thought, oh well, that happens. The internet and GPS can be glitchy sometimes. Eventually, the driver arrived and we started the trip. Right away, something just felt wrong. The driver didn't mark that the drive had started in the app. I didn't even see the awaiting status, which drivers sometimes use to get extra cash for waiting. I usually tolerate that, but this was just strange. We were also taking an unusual route, not the one I'm used to. I even had a weird thought. What if he starts heading in the wrong direction, not toward the city center, but out to the suburban area instead? And damn, he did. He had been pretty silent since the beginning of the trip, and it became very clear that this was not an accident. He still hadn't started the ride in the app, and we were literally driving in the opposite direction, one that had no chance of leading to my destination. At that moment, I genuinely felt scared. It's a horrible feeling when something like this happens and you're alone. I'm a 27-year-old female, by the way, and I'm in a car with a stranger. I gathered myself and asked, "Hey, excuse me, what path did you choose? I don't need to go that way." Immediately, he changed direction toward the correct route, started the trip in the app, and looked absolutely furious. And keep in mind, the trip was about an hour long. He continued driving, but still not exactly as the navigator suggested. He stayed on the correct general route, but kept making odd choices, especially as we got closer to the end of the trip. At that point, I'd called a friend and casually said that I was almost there, just in case, so someone would know I was expected and on my way. He remained silent the entire time. When I finally got out of the car, I was literally shaking. I understand that it's likely that he wasn't planning the worst case scenario we're all thinking of, but his actions were absolutely not okay. What if I didn't have the app working? What if I hadn't checked the road? What if I didn't know the route at all? The most chill explanation is that he wanted to take the longest route possible to get more money, maybe an extra hour of driving. But that's ridiculous, and even then not acceptable. I wrote to customer support and reported the situation. Hopefully I just don't get him as a driver again. So my story happened a few years ago when I was 10 or 11. At that time, my mom and dad had just divorced and my mom moved into a small apartment. The building had 2 apartments per floor right across from each other. In the first few months, we never really saw the neighbor who lived in front of us. But suddenly, we started seeing him more often. I remember the first time I saw him. It was behind the building in the small garden. He was there with his dogs, and I don't know if I felt scared. Not just scared in a usual way, but this feeling like something was wrong. It was like he was staring at me, but not in a normal way. I couldn't explain it, but it made me feel uneasy. There was just something about him, his presence, that felt strange, even though I couldn't pinpoint what exactly it was. It just felt wrong. A few days later, he came to our apartment and he asked my mom if he could buy me toys and even underwear. My mom was naturally scared. I don't know what happened next, but I just know that she kicked him out of our apartment right away. Then about 2 weeks later, it was around midnight. My room was right next to the front door, and I suddenly started hearing knocking. But it wasn't just regular knocking. It was like someone was trying to force the door open by jiggling the handle. It started slow at first, but then it got faster and faster. I could hear it and my heart started racing. I was frozen in fear. I tried to get up to wake my mom or even look through the peephole, but I couldn't move. I was so scared that my body just wouldn't cooperate. I know that it wasn't a dream or anything. I knew it was real. I could feel the panic in my chest. After that, my mom and I moved out quickly, and we never saw him again. But since then, I've really developed this weird paranoia that never really goes away. It feels like my brain keeps playing tricks on me. I hear a little noise and suddenly I'm convinced someone's in the house. I keep imagining things that aren't there, like someone hiding in the hallway, watching me from the dark. I know it sounds irrational, but it doesn't feel that way at the moment. It's like my body freezes, my heart races, and I can't move, just like that night. And it comes in waves. Some days I'm totally fine, and others it all comes back stronger than ever. I start thinking someone might come back, that someone might already be inside. Even when I lock the doors, double check everything, I can't fully shake that feeling. It's exhausting, and I hate that it still has this power over me. It's honestly really not fun. I feel ridiculous sometimes, but it happens out of nowhere, and I just can't stop the fear. It's completely irrational, but it's there, and sometimes it feels like I just can't escape it. And a few years later, someone actually broke into our house. It was a guy who was drunk or high, and I don't think he even had bad intentions. He was just lost, but that didn't make it any less scary. The paranoia is still there, even though I try to remind myself that it's just my brain playing tricks on me. Anyway, that's my story. I know it's not the scariest one, and it probably won't be as interesting to others, and it's my first one, but I just needed to share it. I don't know how to get over it. If anyone has had similar experiences or feelings, I'd be happy to talk about it. Thanks.